State of Play continues the election conversation. Stephanie Hansen from the law firm of Young, Conaway, Stargett and Taylor is here, along with attorney and MSNBC contributor Michael Stafford joining us. Thanks so much for joining us again. So let's get to it. Everything happened exactly the way we expected. Monday morning quarterbacking, we expected all these races to turn out exactly as they did. So we have Ken Simpler versus Sean Barney in the general for treasurer. A good matchup, kind of what you expected Simpler to beat Valenzuela?
I think so. I mean, I believe that's not a surprise that he beat her. I mean, it's a little surprising that it was as close as it was. I think more surprising to me was the fact that Chip Flowers still managed to get 3,000 votes. Actually, Chip Flowers managed to get a third of the votes that came out to vote in the in the Democratic section of the race. So, and the News Journal didn't report on that. So, that was curious.
I mean, with Simpler Valenzuela, her showing was surprising to me. I mean, I did not think she was going to do as well as she did. If I'm, Ken, that's a little disturbing. His biggest problem, though, is just the registration numbers in the general. I mean, can a Republican, can anybody with an R next to their name who's not already an incumbent defeat a Democrat like Sean Barney? And I think that's an open question. My guess is the answer is probably no, but we'll see. Kind
of similar candidates in a way.
Very similar. I mean, when you look at their backgrounds, when you look at their positions, there's not a lot to distinguish the two from each other. Particularly when you take, like, how do Republicans traditionally distinguish themselves in Delaware? A lot of the times it's social issues. Well, obviously, Ken's not running on that, not for the treasurer's office anyway. So, again, how does he put space between himself and Barney?
And I think
Hard to do.
I think the only thing that is going to distinguish the two of them is one's a Democrat and one's a Republican.
Correct.
And so you go, well, who's got the edge at that point? It's a heavy Democrat edge. So I think Barney pulls it out. Yeah,
the one thing Ken does have, he's going to have the unified support of the party organization. I mean, it is all in. The hard R's, the people that are politically active and are Republicans in Delaware, are almost unanimously unified behind him. So, again, if Ken, bigger picture, I mean, if Ken can't win this race, then no Republican is winning a race in Delaware for a long time.
Well, it's an interesting question as they try for a statewide office. They only have one auditor, and that could be in jeopardy this year. The only woman running for statewide office this fall is Brenda Mayrack, who won her primary this week. She's a Democrat. So is this the end of Republicans in statewide office for Tom Wagner? Is he vulnerable?
If I was, I thought there was a real vulnerability here, but and Brenda's a great candidate, and I think she'd do well in the office. But Ken Matlusky did surprisingly well against her. That was, to me, one of the big shockers from yesterday was Ken showing against Brenda. I never,
like 45%,
I would, yeah, 45%. I can't imagine. I never would have thought that it would have been that close a race. So to me, if I'm Tom or if I'm a Republican, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking there's a vulnerability here that we might be able to exploit.
Yeah, I don't know that Ken really ran much. He had a billboard, but I don't know. I mean, there's really no presence there. And the fact that he got 45% of the vote, which was more than a number of other most other losing candidates got, that was a surprise.
So even in a win for Mayrack, there's some holes in the armor a little bit.
There's a question as to how come the win wasn't wider.
She ran about as visible a campaign as I think we've ever seen for an office like the auditor. A lot of it, there were ads, there were calls, there's a lot of mail, a lot of activity. She's been a very active candidate. And for Ken to come that close, Ken, who again was virtually invisible at least to me, it points to a vulnerability. It really does.
Let's move a little bit further down the ticket to the General Assembly races. Close call for Senator Bobby Marshall, but he held out that one. Dennis E. Williams losing his seat in the General Assembly. Surprised by that?
A little. I mean, he has never really been able to keep a wide margin on that seat. I mean, he's not one of the rip-roaring, high performers down in the General Assembly. So I'm a little surprised, but not a lot.
When you look at the number of votes in some of those General Assembly primaries, they're essentially school board races. In those kind of races, with really low voter turnout, you get 200 or 300, maybe 400 people jazzed up for an opponent. or against you, you're in danger. I think it's a message to all the incumbents that in a low turnout primary, you never know what could happen.
Every vote counts. Real quick, let's head to Sussex County. Stephanie, Councilman Vance Phillips, Sheriff Jeff Christopher, both losing their spots in primaries. For people in Newcastle County, explain why that's such a big deal.
Well, it's a big deal because both of them were very visible and they'd been in office for a long time. I think what it really shows is that people vote against shenanigans. Is really what that's about.
Yeah, I mean, Vance has been a leader in the Republican Party. I mean, he's somebody who certainly had, if not at one point, ambitions to higher office. Certainly wanted to be, one of the guys in the back room pulling the strings. So it's a major blow to him. As we all know, I mean, he's been hit with a number of different issues, both political and personal, over the years. I don't think he did himself any favors. Towards the end of the campaign, there was a strange incident on the radio with Dan Gaffney.
Right.
The list goes on. Those kind of things tip a close race, and I think that's what happened here.
And now they're both out of a seat. Our time is up. Thank you, Stephanie Hansen and Michael Stafford. You can catch State of Play online at newsworks.org/Delaware. Click the drop box at the top of the page.